Hi everyone, it's Sagana Girl, and I'm here today to discuss with you my findings during the readings that I had this week with my weekly deck challenge with the Paulina Tarot. It was an interesting week. I learned some interesting information, I feel, from this deck. Sometimes it was a little bit frustrating for me. I don't normally read with this deck, so it was sort of new to be working with something that really didn't feel as comfortable as some of my other decks. So that was interesting, but it's also exciting for me because it was, I really had to sort of pay attention and not just rely on what I generally know, but actually tune into the energy of this deck that's a little bit different than my other decks to really get a sense of what was going on. So I did a different reading each day, and I'm going to post the day and the type of reading that I did on the link below here, so that if you wanted to try this with your decks at home, that would be, something that would potentially be great for you. My reading on Monday, I did a new deck reading, which is available on eclectictarot.com, and it's a reading that you can use to become familiar with your deck and find out the energy around the deck and how it's going to work with you and how you're going to connect with it. So I had two main things come out of that reading, and the first is with regards to the important characteristic of the deck. So that was one of the questions: is what is your important characteristic? And the card that came up for that was the Emperor card. So I'll just show you that picture. Okay. So I found that pretty interesting because the Emperor for me is very much about structure. It's very much about those male qualities, leadership, structure, dominating perhaps. If I think about an emperor, I think about Napoleon, I think about Julius Caesar, and these strong men who sort of led with an iron fist. And that was interesting to me because I felt that this deck is much more like the Empress, much more in the strain or the vein of creativity and imagination. It's a very whimsical deck. So I thought that was a bit of an interesting juxtaposition. But then when I thought further of it, this deck is very much very similar to the RWS, or the Rider-Waite-Smith Symbology, and so that is very structured, and there's particular symbols, and sort of that was the whole, the deck for that people would go to with regards to basing their tarot symbology on. So I guess that sort of fits. It is very RWS Smith, so if you're a fan of those decks, this would probably be a good deck for you. The thing that stood out for me the most was on this card, the Emperor, there's a little marionette that's down in the bottom corner, and I can't remember if I mentioned this in the review, but there's this little guy here, and the Emperor is manipulating him. And so that sort of made me think of pulling the strings and controlling. And so I sort of started thinking of how much am I trying to control the messages I'm getting from my cards during my reading, rather than sit quietly and intuit that information regardless of whether I want to hear it or not. So that was an interesting insight for me, but it also made me feel that, again, back to the Emperor, that this deck is a confident deck, and I can have confidence that it will always give me the information that I am looking for, whether I want to hear it or not. That was my basic gist of it. Okay, so that was the big card that stuck out for me with this deck. The other card that came up was the Eight of Pentacles, which is about detail, craftsmanship, honing your skills, being that skilled craft person. The message to detail stuck out for me. There's a lot of detail in the cards. There's the main image at the forefront of the card, but then in the background and in the corners, there's all of this other stuff that's going on. So let's say, for example, the lovers. So you see the lovers in the center of the card, but then there's all of this information that's going on around them. And so the Eight of Pentacles made me think a little bit about opening my eyes and paying a little bit more attention to what's going on in the background and in the foreground of the cards, and thinking that perhaps the message might be more in the recessed parts of the cards as opposed to the central image. So that was interesting to me. A couple other things that I wanted to note was I didn't feel completely connected with this deck. It was an interesting reading for me to come to each day. I can't say I was jumping up and down with unbridled excitement the way I am with some of my other decks. I mean, I wasn't, begrudging about coming down and doing my readings, but I just found that it wasn't as much of a pull for me, and I was trying to figure out what that's all about, because I really do enjoy the art. The pictures are beautiful, but I think part of what it is for me is that it's a very beautiful deck, but I found that even though I'm not a dark deck kind of person, I didn't feel like there was as much of a balance for me that I needed in the deck. So even some of the darker cards, the shadow-esque cards, were still very positive, in a positive light. And I mean, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But I kind of felt like I wanted to see a little bit more, I don't know if despair is the right word, but I wanted to see a little bit more contrast. So I pulled out a couple of examples. So the Devil card, which is one of the quote-unquote darker cards in most decks, I mean, you see him here. Like, he's definitely, sitting there with his little chain around his hoof, I guess, and he's kind of, I don't know if he's trying to lure this woman or what is, and I really love that she's got her skirt hiked way up there, and you can see a little bit of leg happening, a little bit of thigh action. So, I mean, it's there, it's the devil, but it's still like a downplayed devil. It's still like a happy, sort of positive feeling, and I would have liked to seen a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more darkness, okay? Another one, which came up for me actually a couple times this week. Both times came up reversed 2 days in a row, so apparently I've got to be paying attention to this card, is the Tower card. And again, the Tower, about the drastic change in life or a sudden change in circumstance. So you see the guy falling, okay? I get that. And you've got this angry looking energy or storm cloud and the lightning. But it's still, I don't know. It reminds me of Lemony Snicket. My kids have been doing a bunch of novel studies on Lemony Snicket and the Tale of Unfortunate Events. So it's kind of that feeling for me. It is dark-ish, I guess, but just not as much contrast as I would like to have seen in this deck. So I found that was challenging for me. I am not a dark deck person. The darkest deck I have is the Mary L, which I will do a review in a few weeks, but I've ordered a couple of darker decks, the Tarot of the Vampire by Ian Daniels, and then the Deviant Moon Tarot by Patrick Valenza, because I feel like that is something that's missing out of my collection. So it'll be interesting to see. I might read with those decks and go, yeah, no, I'm so not a dark person. But, I just kind of felt like that was something that was missing. I'm just trying to think. I took a couple of notes. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say is I kind of felt like this deck, 5 days wasn't really enough. I felt that because there's so much detail in the cards, I kind of felt like it was saying, you really got to work with me a little bit longer. You really got to sit down and be patient and listen and sit quietly with me. And, I guess because I wasn't really pulled in, I just didn't really feel like I wanted to do that. So, I don't know, beautiful cards, beautiful artwork, just wasn't really my go-to deck. So, in light of that though, as I'm talking, I'm now thinking that maybe I need to keep this deck out on my table. I think I need to just keep it out on my table so that I can sort of pick it up and use it off and on. I think it is going to take a little bit more time for me to get to know the deck. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Anyways, so that was my experience with the Paulina Tarot. Again, if you're liking the artwork and you're unsure, I think it's a great deck. If you wanted to go, I'm sure that there's lots of people who've taken pictures of this deck and have posted it all over the internet. You can go to eclectictarot.com and see what they have to say about it. You can go to Gypsy Chick on YouTube. I think this, if I'm not mistaken, is one of her favorite decks, and so I'm sure she can give you some really positive, some more positive things to say about it. But it is a beautiful deck, and it was an enjoyable read. So that's all for today, I guess. Thank you for tuning in and watching. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me. I can't figure out how to add the Facebook link, Fool's Journey Tarot Readings. That's my Facebook page. But if you wanted to make some comments, you can comment below or contact me via Fool's Journey Tarot Readings on Facebook, and then you can leave me any comments. I'd love, to hear what y'all have to say, and perhaps you have a completely different experience with the deck. I'm also going to post at the bottom of the screen here my weekly reading schedule, what I did each day, so that if anyone wanted to sort of play around and practice that for themselves, that'd be great. So other than that, love, peace, breathe deep, many blessings. Have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.